ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to today's masterclass. It's brought to you by Profit Master Global Outsourcing, providing premium offshoring solutions. My name is Paul Jansz, and thanks for joining us today. We've got a massive show for you as we continue this masterclass series. Our topic's on what you need or what employers must know in financial year 2025. And as we sort of lead into a lot of the different topics we're going to talk about with my special guest, I think you're in for a treat. So strap yourself in. This will also be recorded as it is right now. So you'll have the ability to go back. If I can stop these notifications. You'll have the ability to go back once it comes out of post-production, and it'll all be available for you. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you are coming back, welcome back. It is probably really good just to quickly share a little bit about this masterclass series. We started this probably 2-3 years ago now, where the president and CEO of Profit Master Global, Richard Croker, we sat down and we decided to do a podcast series. And when we decided that, it was like, what are we going to talk about? How are we going to do this? It was an auditory series. We did a 2-part podcast series, which was very successful. And then we decided to raise the bar into how are we going to make this more interactive? How do we get more guests on board? How do we share more topics? And then ideally have more information that goes out to all of you that are online. So this is educational content, which is brilliant. And I love having the ability to chat to somebody new every single month about something that can bring value to you guys. So we hope it's of value today. If you've missed any of our masterclasses, just jump onto YouTube, type in Profit Master Global Outsourcing, and all the last, probably, what are we in, September now? So probably the last 7 or 8 masterclasses for 2025 will be there. And you can actually go back, share them with your team, whatever. It's all free content. I've also been doing a panel series in the last probably few months. And this is, as we know, Profit Master is a premium offshoring provider. And we've been doing a panel series to talk about offshoring and how you can start to develop the mindset to build your global offshoring team. So wherever they may be in the world, how do you sort of take those steps through it? And sort of Jenna and I were just talking offline there about how she's got a marketing resource and she's priceless. You might even share a little bit about that in a second, but just in terms of just making sure that, you know, you've got that mindset of how we can actually do that. That probably leads me into a little bit, just again, sharing a little bit about who is Profit Master Global Outsourcing. Excuse me. So as I just mentioned, they provide premium offshoring solutions. So if you are considering how you expand your global workforce, and again, sort of Jenna and I spoke just quickly offshore about we've often given examples about how you can increase productivity with team members probably up to 20-25%. And you can definitely, from a cost saving point of view, you can save up to 40% of your employment cost. So there's definitely some massive advantages there. And I know that, you know, you can get some really, really good team members for, you know, 30,000, 40,000 Australian dollars, which you'd probably be paying 80 or $90,000 plus superannuation. So there's a lot of different areas there that are worth exploring, and Profit Master do a fantastic job. We've just come back from their 10th anniversary. So we just celebrated 10 years. So again, they're not one of those companies that here today, gone tomorrow. They've stood the test of time. Richard Croker and his team have built a magnificent company, and, you know, the ability to tap into the talent that is over there is something worth thinking about. So if that's something you'd like to think about, please make sure you chat to, I think Delia's online, Delia McKenzie's online, so she might even start some sort of chat that's in there. Okay, today's topic. Again, we're talking about what employees must know in financial year 25. Everyone will have the opportunity at the end of this as well. We're 12:06, so about 12:55, we'll stop and we'll allow questions. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask, please tap them into the Q&A, because I think that's going to be important. And I'll definitely allow time, I promise, for any questions that you guys might have online. Let me introduce you to our special guest, Jenna Paulin. Welcome back to our masterclass.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being brought back for the second time this year.
Second time this year. That's exactly right. You joined me for probably our first one for 2020.
I think it was February.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, before we kick this off, let's share a little bit about you, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about you, the company Now Actually,
Yeah.
I know that I'm a big fan, and I've used you guys several times as well. So, if you're okay sharing a little bit about you and the company.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Paul. Well, thanks everyone for joining in today. Really appreciate it. Apologise if a bit of a husky voice has woken up, and I don't know why, but I'm sounding very croaky. So a bit about me. I'm a busy business owner, a mum, call myself a bit of a juggler, and I run now. Actually, we're an outsourced consulting company. And outsourced, not offshore, so we're all onshore. But we do have, as Paul mentioned before, our marketing guru, and I can't speak more highly of her and how it's helped our company. And I think that offshoring model is really, really successful for businesses. Now actually is a full service HR generalist company. So we help busy business owners with all their employment, people matter issues, the good, bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So the basic operational, what do I pay someone? I need an employment contract. I need a handbook, a policy, how to have difficult conversations. I need to make some changes, restructures, workplace investigations, HR training. We've got a bit of a philosophy of coach, guide, educate. We love to educate our clients. We're very commercial in the way that we work with them. So there's the law, but there's also the commerciality and being creative to make sure that our solutions suit the business's needs by minimising your risk. So I've got a great team of humans, and we are a fully remote business. So most people work from home, but we do come together and do some on-site as a team, but also on-site with our clients as well. So we're in business because the employment landscape is consistently changing, and we're talking about a few of the things here today. It's been the biggest in the last couple of years in the 13 years that the Fair Work Act has been in place. So lots happening, hard to keep up. So if you're a business owner, know your area. You can't expect to know every aspect of the business. So we're here to help and keep the complex quite simple, because unfortunately here in Australia it's known to be the most complex employment landscape in the globe. And the number of awards there is just a starting point in how complex the experts struggle sometimes and scratch their head. Well, what's this mean?
So
To
true.
keep up with all the changes, it's just crazy. What we're advising clients to do with, for example, casual employees, we're not advising now because of the changes. So, yeah, and people and cash flow are the two things that keep busy business owners up at night, and we can help with those people things. So
Well said.
that's a bit about us and myself.
Well, thank you. Well said. And I think you sort of covered off we often, and I know Delia in particular, she's online, she'll be listening to this, and she often gets, what's the difference between outsourcing and offshoring? And you summed it up really well then, from an outsource point of view, that you're right, we can outsource our HR function. And I know the different functions that I've been involved in there, where I'll engage you guys to come in, where we've got a bit of a people issue, let's call it, and we've got to find a solution to that. And I think as employers, one of the key things that I'll share here as well is, as employers, we can never know what you know. And I think the ability to bounce thoughts, ideas off you, and I think that's one of the key things that I've enjoyed, where you're always accessible. Your people are accessible. Even if you're in Bali, I know there was one stage when you were in Bali, you took the team over to Bali, and I shot you a message and you came back to me. You said you're in Bali, but you still came back to me with solutions. And I think that's what it's about, isn't it? So where your
Yeah,
offshoring might be an offshore team member that's working for you, where I outsourced the HR service, which was outstanding.
correct. It's a bit like I'll never process my own tax return because that's not my area, so why try and tackle this?
Yep.
You leave it to the experts. We're not big enough that we need an internal accountant. So you outsource it and you kind of wipe your hands of the responsibility, and you get more senior qualified people that can do it than what you could probably have in-house.
Yeah, very
Or if you are a large team and have a junior, so to speak, we mentor them. So we take on the mentorship and work with the strategies and provide the solution and education.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And I think what we're going to share today as well is some live case studies where I've used your team as well, Jenna, to where, we all have problems. I haven't met too many businesses. I've been coaching businesses for the best part of 20, 25 years now, and most of them are people challenges, to be fair. So whether we've got to coach people or whether we've got to coach them in or coach them out, to be fair, there's elements there where every single employer will go through that. And that's again, I'm going to share a few of the things that we've worked through over the last probably 3, 4, 5 months. And that's why I thought it was worth getting Jenna back on board today to again, share some of the changes, because as she mentioned before, the landscape's continuing to change. So let's get into this, because I suppose it was probably only 2, 3 weeks ago, maybe I sort of reached out and I said, I've got a challenge. So let's talk about this one. And it was, how do we go about or talk about the termination of an employment agreement or a letter of offer, let's call it, whatever, after it's been issued and it's been accepted. So this was a bit of a challenge that we were going through. It was issued to this particular individual, that was accepted by the individual, and then we wanted to pull out for various reasons. So let's talk about that. Can employers do that?
Yeah, they can. And in our world, you can do a lot of things, and not everything is black and white. So it depends on your level of risk. So we're always asking, well, what's your risk register? So there's no exact answer, but by pulling out of an offer that you've provided, if the individual has signed a contract or a letter of offer, and a letter of offer is actually different than contract, and it's all dependent on the wording within those documents on where that risk lies. But then if you pull it, the onus is on the candidate to challenge or take you elsewhere. That's your only risk. So if you pull it and the candidate does nothing, there's silence, you're clear. It's only if the candidate wants to challenge it that you could become unstuck.
Right.
So you never know what the candidate's like. You don't know where they are on the weekend or who their best friend is. Are they a lawyer? Are they, you just have to be really careful. So what would it mean? It could mean a myriad of things. They could put a claim in Fair Work. They could put a claim for a general protections for discrimination. It also depends on the reason for withdrawing that offer. So, for example, if you withdraw an offer because a medical check came back and it was a physical job, but the offer was pending or the contract was written pending fitness for work, you've got protection there. So it all comes down to what's actually happened, not just the straight, okay, the contract's been happened. Or someone could go through the Equal Opportunity Commission. You want to make sure, though, to protect yourself, the reason for withdrawing is legit, so that if you need to defend yourself from a third party that's been challenged, that you've got proof, background, and reason and merit as to why you had to make this decision.
Yep.
Not just, I've offered, now I don't want to. It always comes back depending on the situation and also if that candidate is going to do something.
Yep.
Sorry, go on, Paul.
Sorry. Can it also be, you sort of mentioned it before in terms of depending on obviously the type of company that you're employing for, and sort of one of the key things that sort of helped this particular case was we had it subject to, so it's a bit like going and buying a house and it's subject to finance and a pest survey as an example. Is it similar where you've got certain subjects to, like you said, a health check, or subject to a drug test, or subject to depending on what you
correct are? Yeah, and that's why it's so critical that employers have the appropriate employment contracts in place. We get told so many times, oh, I've downloaded it off Google, or I've taken it from my old workplace and amended it, or taken it from a friend. Every employment contract, there are bones that are common, but it has to be tailored to the business and written in the right way. So that's why those foundational docs, like a contract, are so important. You've got that side. But you've also got the brand damage that could potentially come from it. From a marketing perspective, it doesn't take much for that candidate to jump on Google reviews or badmouth the company on LinkedIn or any form of social platform. So there's more than just that direct, oh, I'm going to lodge a claim in a certain, like a commission.
Yes.
So there's that side to think about as well, which sometimes is worse because we all know how hard it is to remove a bad Google review.
Well,
sometimes near impossible.
It's near impossible. That's exactly right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
suppose if I can just share for everybody online as well, just because sometimes whether you're doing your own recruitment or you're using a recruitment agency, what I'd recommend is you do your own due diligence as well. So don't rely on the agency. I know these agencies, and no disrespect to what they do, but they charge a lot of money and they sometimes don't do the DD that they should be doing. So this is where it's important that, you know, if you've got the opportunity to do a little bit of your own investigation into people, do that, especially if they're a key employee of the business.
Correct.
Employee, really, it's worth it if you've got
the
time and effort just to dig a little bit deeper, find out, you know, the 2 degrees of separation is always there. And I think that's where we sort of came into that. It's like, oh, so-and-so knows so-and-so, and okay, well, maybe we can ask them. And yeah, it all unraveled, and we were lucky we're in that situation.
Whoever puts a bad reference on their resume, you know,
that's exactly right.
The reality is, I'm not going to put someone forward that I know is going to have a bad word to say about me.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
Dig a little bit deeper is the advice. Yeah. Now this one, let's get on to the I suppose the myth, I suppose, and again another area where maybe 12 months ago I came to you and said, tell me about this, you know, the 3 warning situation and the myth around you know, you need to give people 3 warnings if they are not performing. And you know, there's obviously some areas of the business where a little bit more measurable, let's say sales, if they're not hitting sales targets and they're not meeting their KPIs at meetings, because measure the activity to get to the result. Tell me about this. As employers, what do we need to be aware of with regards to these 3 warnings?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say it's not a myth, but I'm not going to say it's 100% true. And that's why people get frustrated with us HR people, because it's going to depend. So there's no law that you have to have 3 warnings, because if I come and punch you, well, that's serious misconduct. I don't need to have background warnings. I'm out the door. So it depends. If you're getting challenged, oh, this person hasn't had warnings, they don't necessarily need to, depending on the nature of the event that caused the termination. Now, if it was they're not using a system correctly, or, you know, just simple lack of performance, you're going to need some warnings. But depends on the depth of the event that is caused if you can terminate without pre-warnings. Someone might have 1 warning on the file, the event occurs, and then termination. That might be enough, but you have to look at it in totality. And terminating someone, whether they've got warnings or not, is based on process. Is it fair and reasonable? Procedural fairness. So the amount of times I've ended up in the commission, it's not whether for unfair dismissal, it's not whether that dismissal should have taken place or not. It's whether did the company follow the process in their policy, following fair work, all that type of thing, giving people opportunities to respond. So it all comes back to that. And is the situation misconduct or serious misconduct?
Yep.
Like rocking up late to work consistently, you would need the 3 warnings. So if I was terminating someone for absenteeism, I wouldn't just do it off 1 warning. I would want a couple over a period of time. I would want documentation that shows that I've given them an opportunity to improve. So, like, as you can see, it depends on the situation. So it is a myth in terms of, oh, but I've got no warnings, I can't terminate. It's not necessarily true, because you can. Depends on the event that has occurred.
But it's fair to say you've got to give them a reasonable amount of time. You can't go, yesterday was, I don't even know what day of the week it is. Yesterday was Wednesday. today's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday, first warning yesterday, second warning today, third warning tomorrow, and then you're out.
Correct.
Got to give them a reasonable amount of time to correct what the problem is.
Correct. And a lot of people will just say, I've given them a warning. Okay, but did you invite them to a disciplinary meeting? And when I say invite, so again, even if I punch you, you just can't come and give me a warning for punching you, so to speak. You know, even though that's a really serious offence, that's violence and it's terminable, you have to invite me to a disciplinary meeting, outlining the allegations, give me an opportunity to respond by coming to a meeting, provide a support person if I want, and listen, even though it's clear you've got a black eye, because the commission will say, yeah, Jenna's gone and done this. She's committed the crime. You, as the employer, didn't follow the process. So a lot of people come to meetings with the warning letter already under the table. No predetermined, even if it's clear. So you have to follow the process, which comes back to a little bit like make sure you have the right employment contracts in place. Make sure you have the right performance management, disciplinary policy and procedure, because the commission will follow that. The employee needs to follow the process. So the amount of times we've got clients, yeah, I've got all these warnings on file, but you didn't actually give the individual an opportunity to respond. Yeah, but they did it. I'm not saying they didn't do it.
Yes.
But you have to go through the process. And that's the whole employment HR space is a process. Whether you agree that process is right or wrong, you have to do it.
Yep. And I think that's where employers may, and you guys online, I know we've got a lot of you guys online, you might ask yourself, do I have a policy or a process that gets, you know, like you've just mentioned, Jenna, because I'm here to say most don't have something like that.
Right. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm a small business, I don't need all that. I'm sorry, in the eyes of the law, whether you got 2 people, 22 or 200, you should have the foundational elements in place.
Especially if that employee was to challenge that at Fair Workers, then you don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, even if Fair Work can see that the employee did the crime, but if you don't have the policy, the employer, you're going to get slapped. That's just an easy slap. Yeah. It's a sad slap because it's so simple to have in place.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. I had something else that I wanted to ask about that, but I think we might move on. It's what my brain does. It might come back to me. So
all good.
Let's talk about this. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's been brought into play most recently. Let's call it the right to disconnect.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
Yep.
When is it coming into play? And what do we possibly need to change with regards to our agreements? And probably to add a little bit more to that, are there any loopholes?
Yeah. So the right to disconnect is a new piece of legislation that come into play on the 26th of August this year. Yeah. For a majority of businesses that are considered, let's call them a large business. Small business, which is 14 headcount and under, comes into play August next year. Okay, so the small players, this is not relevant until next year. The larger players, it is live. What does it mean? It basically means that you cannot penalise employees for not responding to communication outside their normal working hours or the operational hours of the business. So if you have a question at 6 o'clock at night to one of your employees, because as the owner, that's when you're getting through your emails, for example, and you try to call them, send them a text, send them an email, and they don't respond, you can't be annoyed at them for that. If a client contacts them after hours and they don't pick up, you cannot penalise your employee because they didn't answer. So it's providing that opportunity to break away and disconnect from someone. There is obviously reasonable grounds. and what would be considered fair. For example, if you're a project manager, let's call your hours were 9 till 5.
Yep.
There was night shift workers. Something happened at 7 o'clock that was at 7 p.m. really drastic to the project, and you're the owner of that. I would consider that fair and reasonable, so to speak, but not, oh, the material's going to be there for tomorrow. You know, if something broke, something fell apart, it is really imperative, that would be most likely considered reasonable.
Okay.
Shift workers is a bit of a unclear line, because if I'm contacting you about a shift opportunity, I'm not allowed to contact you. So it's going to be a bit grey. And it's all about assessing the risk of what you're trying to contact your employees about. Right. So it comes into play from the employer perspective, clients, suppliers, really any stakeholder. So what do you need to do as a business? Croaky voice is coming. Basically, what we're recommending to our clients is have a policy, a right to disconnect policy, or insert a new section into your employee handbook. So that's protecting yourself. Something else we're recommending is changing your terms of engagement, your client contracts, your T's and C's with your clients, making sure that you stipulate these are our hours of operation. Because at least if you get challenged, like the employee challenges you or lodges a dispute in the commission, if you've got the records and the processes, the structure in place, well, you've got no control of your clients calling your staff at 6 o'clock. Yeah. It just means the employee doesn't have to pick it up. And you can go back to your client and say, well, actually, no, our hours of operation are X per the T's and C's that you signed with us. So we actually recently got asked by a journalist, what havoc is it causing in businesses? What disruption? We haven't seen too much, because I actually think it might cause more havoc for the smaller players, because the smaller businesses are the ones that are probably doing a lot of things after hours. Because as a business owner, you're wearing multiple hats. Yeah. So, you know, you could be a tradie on the tours, and then at 8 o'clock at night, you're doing your bookwork. And you need to ask your plumber about a question so you can send the invoice to the client. I reckon that might happen. So we've still got 12 months up our sleeves, but our clients, we haven't seen too much of a disruption. Okay. But the legislation is in for like the whole, it's not certain awards, it's nationwide. Right.
And that's probably the grey areas, those little, exactly what you were talking about then. There's no doubt there's grey areas there.
Yeah. And
I suppose if the employee has the right, if there's a call or a text message, not to respond. That's all.
Correct. Yeah. Whereas previously they also had the right not to respond. Yeah. Some employers might slap them for doing that. You know, so we're considered small business, so it doesn't impact us till August next year. We've got a policy and we've amended our terms of engagement with our clients, because we kind of do the best practice, but we have a very open communication. Yep. Your work is not your whole life. So we will not contact you after hours unless it's desperate. And we are like that with our clients. We're not brain surgeons. That's right. Okay, you might be calling us at 7 o'clock at night. Your matter can probably wait till 8 o'clock the next day, in reality. Even if it's about a termination, like your business is most likely not going to fall over overnight.
100%. And you mentioned small business before. So is that based on headcount? Is that like
14 and under. Yep. So nothing to do with revenue, 14 and under.
Okay. So if you're running a business with 14 or less team members, it doesn't kick in till next year.
Correct.
So if you're over that, everyone online, it's kicked in already. All right, brilliant. Let's talk about this old favorite, I suppose. It's always an interesting one between contractor and employee. So it's you know, the definition continues to come up, I suppose. Has it changed? You know, depending on the independent contractor or an employee. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So I was talking to one of my team members yesterday. In my simple mind, the definition of employment hasn't changed, but technically it has, because if you're doing the right thing anyway, there's really no change. What's happened is Fair Work have now clearly defined a worker, the employee, versus a contractor, and they now have the power to deal with a dispute of, is the person an employee or contractor? Previously, they didn't have the power. They had power about sham contracting, which we'll talk about next. There's a little bit of interlock, but so Fair Work can make a ruling to say, no, this individual is an employee or a contractor. Previously, they couldn't. What they have introduced is what's called an opt-out concept, which means if you are a contractor earning over the high income threshold, which is $175,000, so we're talking the high end.
Yep.
If you were a contractor earning over $175,000, you can opt out of being classified as an employee, right? So you can say, no, I know I might be, but I'm opting to be a contractor. I'm opting out of the employment relationship.
Yes.
So their status, they cannot come back and claim employee entitlements down the track. So if you're over that, you can opt out. And the way you should do that as the employer that's engaging, if the contractor wishes to do that, is have it in writing. Basically, like you're acknowledging a disclaimer, sign off. I'm acknowledging, say if I'm earning 200,000, I am contractor for all fit and purposes. Because what's happening is people are saying they're contractors, everything's great. Years down the track, they're trying to claim employment and get all their leave and all these employee entitlements. Super. Yeah. Exactly. If you're under the 175, which would be a lot of people, because 175 is quite up there.
Yep.
There's a potential that it wouldn't hold up, even if you opted out, right? Even if you said, no, I'm a contractor, I'm earning 100 grand, no, I want to be a contractor. So there's room for them to say, no, actually this person is an employee, and you must pay them the entitlements that they were owed.
Yep.
So it comes back to, like we've kind of said in the last few scenarios, documentation, having a contractor's agreement in place that's very clear, having the disclaimers, having the right conversations, and don't just put it in place and set and forget. Review it every kind of 12 months so you've got fresh documents. So making sure that the contract is written how the relationship actually works. Yeah, because what we're seeing is people are all great, I'm contractor, and then 5 years down the track, they're claiming employment benefits. Spot on. And it's happening.
Yeah, it is happening. And I know, and this is probably why it's good if we've got, what's going on here? Something's happened here. Wanted me to confirm my speaking language, which was interesting. Yes, it's English. Thank you. Yeah, look, I know even this is what's great for whether it be, there's probably a series of different accountants on here and obviously with their clients and, you know, what are your clients doing with their contractors or employees and having been involved in the, call it the, I don't know, the chiropractic physio type of world. They are contractors, but they're not contractors. You know,
correct. So and accountants, like we help a lot of accountants because they deal with the tax and super side, but there's the Fair Work side. Yeah. And a lot of people just put people on as contractors, A, because they feel there's no responsibility, or B, the individual wants to be the contractor. But you have to make sure that you're doing what's right for your business, minimizing your risk. And just because they sign a contractor's agreement, there actually is still risk they can come back and claim. And then it's making sure if it is a contractor, is it a proprietary limited or an ABN? You've both got different T's and C's. There's different things with tax and super and all that type of stuff. Yep. So yeah, it's just a word, like you've mentioned health. We see it a lot in fitness, say like fitness instructors, creatives, and accountants have so many clients, and their clients have contractors or subbies in the trades.
Yes.
And contractors are just no longer what they used to be.
Yes.
And I guess that's where it lands into, what's sham contracting? What's the difference between employee and contractor?
Talk us through
So
that.
sham contracting is essentially engaging an individual as a contractor when they should be an employee. So a bit like the saying I'll probably say, if it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. I got that right. So if the individual is representing your brand, they've got an email address, working in your office, you're providing them the tools and resources, dictating when they work, they're going to be an employee.
Yep.
So we get so many clients, oh, but I don't want the responsibility. Another, head, like whether they're a contractor or not is still your responsibility. Or, oh, no, the individual wants to be a contractor. I get that. But don't you want to protect your business and minimize risk?
Yeah.
So if you know they should be an employee, that's what they should be.
Yes.
So, yeah, if it looks like an employee, it's going to be an employee. And if the contractor refuses to convert to the employee, you make sure you have records that you requested they convert and they declined. Now, I'm not saying those records will hold up, but they're going to be better than if you get challenged and you've got nothing to prove that actually I did offer Paul to come over to an employee on this date, this date, this date over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Because what I was talking about before, contractors are now applying to get employee entitlements through Fair Work. So they can put in a general protections claim for sham contracting, even though I signed a contract with you hunky-dory for the last 5 years, our relationship's turned sour, or I've spoken to my mate at the barbecue on the weekend that knows a bit more than me. Oh, I'm entitled to annual leave for the last 5 years. I'm going to go claim that.
Correct. Yep.
And then business owners like, yeah, but hang on, they've signed the contract. They wanted to be contract. Doesn't matter.
But is this also where you get a little bit of, again, the color gray comes into it? I prefer black and white, but gray, let's use your example just before, representing the brand. I'm trying to remember these, so let's see how good I am. Representing the brand, email address. So yes, let's say I tick 2 of those boxes, but then the company that I'm engaged by, they don't set my hours. I provide all my own equipment. Suddenly there's 2 boxes of the 4 ticked. So is this where the grey area comes into it?
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing about the employment law space. And people seek advice from us, but at the end of the day, you as the employer or our client have to make the call. We will recommend it's this one, and it's that balancing act. It's the what's your risk? Are you okay with having it risky, or you want to be safe, or you're okay to challenge? It's a bit like the termination. Should I terminate? I don't have warnings, but having that person in here, I might lose a massive client or 3 good staff members.
Yes.
So it's so great. And that's what's frustrating for business owners. Just give me an answer. But there's not. So you have to review the whole situation and determine what's most appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where, again, stick to your own lane, I suppose. And if you're unsure,
Correct.
reach out, because it's really interesting, because I think you're right. As employers, we've got to make sure we protect that, because it turns sour 5 years later, someone lodges a claim, and like you said, not just annual leave, but superannuation. It can hurt the business from a cash flow perspective.
Yeah, and it can hurt the business from brand, depending on how far it goes. It could be on official record. Comes back to time, effort, stress. It's like any legal matter. Like, what's the reward of defending it? Because you're just going to suck the money. and cause a lot of stress.
Yep.
So try and do the right thing from the start. And I personally believe employees are getting, and contractors, I guess, are getting more savvy because there's so much information at their hands and they're just exposed to so much more. So the risk of, we say, oh, let's hope they don't know. I just don't think that's a thing anymore. You know, social media, we've got platforms and accounts that deliver news and updates in a fun, easy way to interpret. So people know what the right to disconnect means. People know what the differences are, and they can lodge things. And yeah.
Yep. Yep. So true. So true.
Yeah.
With that, let's are there any changes that everyone needs to know about with regards to casual employment?
So casual has continued to change. So over the last few years, casual has changed quite a bit in terms of obligations from an employer's perspective. However, they've changed again 26th of August. So previously, if you had an individual that did regular systematic hours of work, so say I was a casual, I worked 4 hours, 2 till 6, Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday regularly, that could be deemed as a permanent part-time position. So if you have regular, consistent hours, you used to have to go through what was called the casual conversion process. And that was on the onus of the employer to do, which would talk to the individual, have a conversation about, do you want to convert to permanent part-time, have the appropriate records. Now, I personally think this is probably a good change from an employer's perspective. The onus is on the employee to ask to convert. So there's not as much paperwork and process that an employer has to follow through with. So now the conversion process is on if the employee raises it and they want to do it. Previously, it was like a routine thing you had to do. So basically, the definition hasn't changed too much, but put stronger words within it.
Right.
So if I'm a regular casual, I can come to you as my employer and say, hey, Paul, I want to convert to permanent part-time, for example.
Yep.
You then have obligation to respond to my request within 21 days, provided in writing. If that response is a no, you have to have good operational reasons and justification as to why, especially because I've been doing it for the last 12 months.
Yep.
So why? You have to have strong grounds. So that's the process. If the person has advanced commitment of their work, they know that they're doing these hours and they're set for the next 6 to 12 months, that's where you're going to come unstuck. If it's a true, say at McDonald's, people are doing different shifts every week, that's not relevant.
Yeah.
What has been amended is, so we have a fair work information statement. It's a statement that must be provided to all new employees. There's also a casual information statement that's been around for a while. However, it's been amended. So if you don't have the current one, make sure you get the current one. That statement must be provided to a casual on the onset of employment, at the 6-month mark, and at the 12-month mark, and then every 12 months after.
Okay.
Now, I did a lunch and learn to an accounting practice 3 weeks ago, and they just looked at me and thought, that's ridiculous. No one's going to do that. Surely our client. I said, oh, don't disagree. But if you don't have records, you've done it, and you get challenged.
That's right.
It's a bit like you must provide a tax file form and super form. It's one of those things.
Yep.
So that's a new change on that statement. It's such an administrative nightmare, you can say, but it's something that needs to happen.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And
this one may not apply to too many people online, but I know there's some changes to, let's call it the regulated workers. Yeah, okay, to explain what a regulated worker is to start off with, and then maybe who it affects.
Yeah. So a regulated worker is an employee-like worker, which is all a bit of a tongue tie. It's mainly focused on road transport or the gig economy and digital platforms like Uber, Deliveroo, if they're still around, those type of ones where individual and road transport, because say a lot of truck drivers are contractors, but they're essentially employees. So these contractors would be considered regulated workers. So what it provides is they can apply to Fair Work like an employee. And it's quite complex, and because it's so new, there's not much exposure from a test perspective. So it'll be based on application to the Commission on what it looks like. But basically, you can create minimum set of standards for regulated workers,
Okay.
which in easy terms are technically contractors in these specific industries.
Yep.
Yeah, so a bit of a mouthful, not something that's probably too relevant to most people on here, but if you've heard the word, mainly regulated worker connected to road transport or the gig economy, your Ubers, Deliveroos, those type of digital platforms.
Yep. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one that, what have we got? Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes until we take questions. So if you've got any questions, I know there's a couple in there already, so please pop them into the Q&A if you've got any questions for us, please. Well, not for me, but for Jenna. I'm not getting involved in this. But one of the ones that we spoke about, or that actually was a part of what happened, I suppose, we engaged you guys at Now actually with regards to a workplace investigation. And it was an interesting one because as an employer, we didn't really know what to do, how to handle it. We had an inkling of how we should handle it, but I know I'm glad I contacted you guys because the way we were going down the road, which was, we shouldn't have done. And we engaged you guys from an independent point of view to conduct this investigation. Yeah, okay, to share a little bit about what employers should do in these sort of situations?
Yeah, sure. This was the barley one. I remember getting a text. I was sitting back having breakfast overlooking the warm, humid. Yes. So if a employee has come to you with a concern that's serious, a complaint, an allegation, and there is potential risk, even if the employee says, oh, but I don't want to make a formal complaint, and the employer manager, you have a duty of care and right to protect the workforce and look into it. So what does that mean? So say, for example, a bullying claim, right? Employee comes to you, such and such, I'm feeling bullied. I don't want to make a formal, I just want to let you know. You actually have a duty of care to investigate and look into this. What does that look like? Will depend on the situation. You definitely need to go through an investigation process and understand what's gone on, find out the facts and not just assume. I never recommend that investigation should be conducted internally because there's so much potential for confidentiality, conflict, biased opinion, all that type of stuff. So making sure that a process is conducted, giving everyone an opportunity, because 9 times out of 10, what comes to you and what you think might happen is actually not what's occurred. And I think that might have happened in your situation. I didn't personally do it, but I think when you and I were talking initially, you thought ABC was the outcome going to happen. It was actually XYZ.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And we take a real personal approach. So we're humans, but we're not emotionally connected.
Yep.
So, and in this scenario, I think the person that was getting questioned actually sent our investigator a really nice wording to say, this has been really difficult, but I appreciate the way it was handled. So it's about finding out the facts, listening to the words that's been said, and then potentially talking to other people to come up with whether it's substantiated or not. And as much as coming to a manager or HR is in confidence. You, as a leader in the business, have a duty of care to take action, even if the employee that's come to you doesn't want you to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I know trust can be broken and it can be quite awkward, but you need to do that. Otherwise, you could be penalised quite significantly because, for example, if it's a bullying, it could then turn into a work cover claim for stress and anxiety. You will get questioned by work cover and they will want to see that you've done an investigation, which would be a report that provides the findings and recommendations.
As opposed to, sometimes then in the past, swept under the carpet, and oh, look, it'll go away. But you're right.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I can share to everybody when we did engage, and you were in Bali at the time, I think it was probably because we really didn't have any idea of how to go about this. So I think the way that you guided us through it and the way that the steps that we had to, and it was, when you sort of bring those sort of situations to light, it is a little bit awkward because emotions are getting involved and it does make it difficult and people don't want to go through that process. But I think the one thing that, that was decided was exactly your words there, which was the duty of care, and to make sure that as employers, our butts were covered as well if it did go further.
Correct.
But it was more the guiding that your team took us through, which was, it was a really good thing. And then we stepped away because you're right. Yeah. There's no bias, there's no judgment, there's no, and then we let the independent party come in and conducted the investigation.
Correct. And especially with the whole rise of claims awareness and importance of employee well-being, the word that's out there, psychosocial hazards, all that type of thing, compared to years ago, it's so much more critical. And I know employers think, oh, but it's a nothing, or it's money, or time and effort. You've got to do it.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Brilliant. Well, what are we? 12:54. Thank you very much. Questions? Again, if you've got them, please throw them at me. Let me just go through a couple here. Hello, Emma Reeves. Good to have you here. Em's just asked a question. Keen to know if Jenna is qualified, knowledgeable with traineeships and apprenticeships. What's the process for employers and what tax subsidies are available? It used to be quite prominent, but government has scaled back in some areas. Do they know this, or is it more of an accounting question?
Yeah, so we know stuff about traineeships and apprentices, but the tax would be the accounting side. It's a bit like the contractors. There are the HR employment and the accountant side, but definitely reach out to me, Emma. I'm happy to have a chat and understand your question and your situation in more detail, and then I'll be the first to tell you if we can't do it. So one of the things we're really good at, if we can't do it, we won't take it on. A bit like we can defend Fair Work cases, but we won't say yes to all of them. We'll say, no, this one needs a lawyer, or no, this one needs something else. So, yeah, happy to have a chat because that is quite a complex area.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the challenges that we find, isn't it? That there are little complexities. Nothing's, like we've said before, nothing's black and white. Even talking about that contractor employee type of situation, it's not black and white. So how do you deal with it? So, which is brilliant. Another question: what happens in a situation where the company has no documented policies?
That's a tricky one. Basically, you've got no leg to stand on. And if worst case scenario does happen and there's a claim in Fair Work or Work Cover or anybody, you will be hit even worse as an employer if you don't have those things in place. Because a lot of contracts will say you must follow the company policies and procedures. Like, we never recommend put a policy in a contract. But then if you don't actually have those policies, you're in trouble. So, yeah, I think if you don't have any, it's time to probably consider it. the best starting point would be recommending an employee handbook. So that's basically the 101 guide or the Bible with the policies, procedures, boundaries and guidelines, anything to do with employment, HR type of stuff. And then if you need specific policies, but you can have that. But I think a handbook is a great starting point because then it's all neat in one place.
Good point. It's a great point. And I know we've spoken about that before as well. So ditto on that for sure. Jenna, thank you. There aren't any other questions coming through, but I suppose a great little session to, again, update everybody. And I think the key thing is that if you want to know more, where do they find you?
Yeah, no, they find us on the website, LinkedIn, or I'm sure my contact details might be shared, or contact@nowactually.com.au. Yeah, so that's our email address.
Yeah,
or
search for Now Actually.
Yeah, .com.au.
You can search for Jenna right now, and you can maybe do a quick LinkedIn search and connect with her if you haven't already connected with her. I'm sure Emma will. So fantastic. Any final comments from you?
No, I just think be proactive. Make sure you have those foundations in place that when you do get challenged or questioned, you've got something to lean back on. And don't think just because I'm a small business, it's not going to impact me. I've seen that time and time again.
Yeah, brilliant. Well said. Well said. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jenna, for joining us. And to all of you that have been online, thank you again. We're just clicking very close to the 1 hour mark, which is, we managed to stay in the 1 hour zone, which is really, really good. So I hope all of you guys have got value out of this. That was, this is the key thing to how you now put that into what you need to do next. So these are all really valuable little masterclasses, but it's about what you're going to do next. And if that means you need to look at the policies, or you've got to look at a handbook, or again, that's what the value of these bring to the table. So I hope all of you guys online have enjoyed what we've done. Just a quick one I mentioned before with regards to the panel series that I've been running. And again, the first and second panel series that we've been doing to talk about offshoring as well. That's on the Profit Master Global Outsourcing YouTube page. So if you want to go back and have a look at what we've done there, please do so. My next one is on October the 8th. So again, we're going to be talking about some key elements of, again, offshoring. And we've got a live case study as well, talking to an Australian business here who started off with 1 team member, and now they've got 4 team members and are actually looking to expand them out to 5 and 6 team members. So again, it's worked successfully for them. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that are considering all of this, but they're scared. And like anything, what you don't know, you don't know. So if it can be of any benefit, please look out for the invitation. I'm sure you receive it in your email soon. It'll be in your inbox. Otherwise, thank you all. Thank you all for joining us, and signing off until I see you next time. The recording will be up on our YouTube page in the next couple of days. Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Join us at Profit Master. Passionate people, passionate careers.